Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy Boulanger, and up next on the GM at the top. Do me a quick favor, hit like. If it is your first time checking out the GM, hit subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. So, in this week's segment of At the Top, we're just going to talk about the very top, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to tackle two questions. One, should the Baltimore Ravens rest starters in Week 18? And question number two, which quarterback do you trust going into the playoffs? Let's get into it. Should the Baltimore Ravens rest starters in Week 18? My answer, just like I had in the post-game reaction video, is yes. More specifically, yes to any starter or major contributor who has had an injury designation. Okay? Those would be starters like Odell Beckham, who got dinged a little bit in this past game. Zay Flowers, who balled out this past week, but came into last week and last week's game with an injury designation. Um, Guys like Ronnie Stanley, who has been questionable for several weeks in a row. Morgan Moses, who did not have an injury designation, but for an aging right tackle, he could use the rest. A guy like Kevin Zeitler, who has had some questionable statuses over the last several weeks, he could use the rest. Gus Edwards, who is not injured, but a big bruising back, a guy who's approaching 30 could use the rest. Um, and I know that the Baltimore Ravens have just developed offensive continuity over the last 5 weeks, but yet and still, I don't believe that the guys I named are going to suffer much from being out a couple of weeks, especially when those couple of weeks will give them time to mend. And that's going to be key going into the second round of the playoffs. Who is the healthiest? Nobody who doesn't get the first round bye is going to be 100% healthy or even close to that. After the first week, actually, after week 18, and then the first round of the playoffs, nobody's going to be healthy going into the divisional round, which is the round we'll show up in. And so I think that we need to be as healthy as possible. And those guys that I named, all of them are approaching 30 or over 30. I did not name Lamar Jackson specifically because I am okay with him treating this game like a preseason game, maybe playing a first half. The reason why I say treating it like a preseason game because we have nothing to gain with a win. I know somebody mentioned to me if we lose this game, Pittsburgh would have swept the Ravens this season. But the question is, or the bigger question is, what would that matter? Right? Pittsburgh, even if they won this game, still needs so much more help that they may not even get into the playoffs. Anyway, it does not benefit us, nor does it hurt us to lose this game. So so do I want to win? Of course. But I think we could win with our backups. But Lamar Jackson, I would love to see him get 3 or 4 drives in, show some good productivity, especially being able to play, excuse me, with a few guys he hasn't developed a depth of chemistry with. If Odell sits, Zay sits, you can see more reps for guys like Aguilar, more depth with guys like Bateman, who seems to be coming along at this point in the season. Maybe getting Talon Wallace a couple of routes in, a guy who won us a game a couple of weeks ago, and we may need to rely on him, this late in the season. And so that's my thinking behind resting some of those aging starters, especially those who've had some injury concerns. When we jump to the defensive side of the ball, there is guys like Marlon Humphrey who did get hurt in this past game, Brandon Stevens who did not play this past game, Cal Hamilton, and I know somebody corrected me. I know his name is Kyle, but it was just a mispronunciation. I'm very, very aware it's Kyle. Um, but Kyle Hamilton, uh, who did not play in this game. Um, And so when you look at those names, those are big time contributors. It's beneficial for those guys to get rest and keep recovering and keep getting healed up. Even a guy like a Pat Queen and a Roquan. Roquan Smith has 158 tackles as we sit here today. That's a lot of tackles for one dude. That's almost 9 tackles per game, and that doesn't include other hits and bangs he has on the season. So he could be well over 200. So he's a guy who could benefit from resting his body for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever the time frame could be. So I definitely see it beneficial for the Ravens to rest a lot of the starters and allow them to get refreshed and come into the second round of the playoffs. I understand that there is some concern about what happened in 2019. But truthfully, that's the only evidence we're leaning on. We're leaning on evidence from almost 4 full seasons ago. You got to remember that Lamar Jackson um, is not even just a better player now, he's a totally different player now. That was Lamar Jackson's first year starting in the league for a complete season. I know he started the second half of 2018, but for a whole season, that was his first year. And so it was easy for Tennessee, who was established at that point, it was easy for them to show up in the playoffs and develop a scheme to stop Lamar Jackson and that offense. And so I think that because Lamar Jackson is different, the weapons around him is different, and everybody on this team who was around in 2019 is 4 years older, 4 years more mature. You got to think, even like a Marlon Humphrey, he was about 23 at that time. He's 27 now, so he's a much more mature player, and so I think that they could definitely benefit from the rest. Okay. Am I totally against them playing? No. But I definitely see it beneficial with a lot of the guys who had injury designations. Remember, specifically the guys with injury designation is who I'm referring to as it pertains to starters. Excuse me. Now let's jump to a question that was posed on First Take this morning. And it's super, super clear, man, that national sports media has an agenda against Lamar Jackson and these Baltimore Ravens. When I came out and I would speak in a critique for Lamar Jackson when he had a bad game, when he needed to improve, when he was fumbling the ball and throwing interceptions, I was absolutely 100% serious about what I said, and I stood by and stand by what I said. But a critique is so much more different than a total discredit for his talent and his ability. Let's listen to the audio from the First Take show this morning, and then we'll come back with some commentary.
The Ravens improved to 13-3 and lock up the 1 seed in the AFC. Lamar Jackson, a near lock to win his second AP NFL MVP award. He also won unanimously in 2019. So here's the deal, Mad Dog.
Yes.
Is Lamar the quarterback you would most want right
No.
now? Why didn't we finish what I was going to say?
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Heading into the playoffs. Did
No.
you just see the beatdown over the weekend?
Yes, of course I did.
You watched that?
Yes, I did.
You
Yeah.
should have
Back
put
in
money
Molly.
on, maybe you should have put money on Lamar
I didn't
Jackson.
touch that one. No.
Yeah.
Here's first off, there's nobody who's better than Mahomes. So let's put that in the mix right there. You can't take him over Mahomes. Here's what I'm going to say about Lamar Jackson. And to be fair, this is a fair comment. And anybody who thinks I'm crazy here and I'm not being fair is not paying attention. Any football person, anybody on the Ravens, in 4 games that he has played in the postseason, they've scored 52 points. 4 games. And they've lost 2 games at home. So I understand this is a different team, but when he's been the orchestrator at that position for that franchise, and also after he won an MVP, they've scored 52 points. And his quarterback rating is unimpressive. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to bounce back. Every guy's going to have his moment, but I've been around sports a long time. I've seen plenty of guys be great. Clayton Kershaw is a perfect example, who have been great in regular season play, and when they get in the big postseason spot, They're just, for whatever the reason, they're not quite as good. I expect him to be very, very good, but there's a ton of pressure on him. He should win 2 home games. But remember, in 4 postseason games that he has been involved with, and he wasn't great in the bowls for Louisville, 52 points in 4 games. That is fact. And he's lost 2 games at home. The Ravens can downplay it. Harbaugh can downplay it. Stephen A can downplay it. Swagoo, downplay it all you want. That is the issue. 52 points, 4 playoff games. Let me see him score 70 in 2 games at home. And then we can talk. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Let's wait.
Marcus?
I trust Lamar right now, but more than anybody in the playoffs. And
More than Mahomes.
I understand what Mad Dog is saying. Mahomes is a better player. I trust Lamar more right now. Lamar has played better than every quarterback over the last 5 weeks, Mad Dog. So why wouldn't I trust him more going into the playoffs? And how can you bring up the fact of the old playoff performances and admit that it's a completely different situation? Those situations matter, Mad Dog. Didn't Matthew Stafford's situation matter when he left Detroit and went to the Rams? Because he was with a better team and better players around him and a better offense and a better offensive coach. Doesn't that matter? Doesn't it matter when players change situations and they get in a better one and we start to see the fruit of that? This ain't the same Lamar Jackson that's been in the previous 4 playoffs. Like, I'm not on here to fight for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a $250 million quarterback. He's been a league MVP already. We know he's a really good quarterback. But I just can't stand you talking about the past playoff situations like this is the same one. It's not. It's a better defense. It's better playmakers around him. And he's playing at a better level. Throwing the football and using his athleticism. That's sickening for you to bring that up. Go ahead, Steve.
Well,
And Mahomes is the best quarterback.
Listen, like, here is the absolute correct answer to this question. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's just that it's the Baltimore Ravens. Because the one thing that Patrick Mahomes can't do is catch the damn ball. We have no faith in the Kansas City Chiefs because we don't believe in their receivers. I mean, damn it, they don't know how to line up properly and align themselves properly, let alone catch the damn football. And so when you have that as a problem, we have no reason to have faith. We look at Travis Kelce, who's a future Hall of Famer, 2-time champion, arguably the greatest tight end in the history of the game. And this is a guy that people are wondering whether or not he's going to retire after this season is over, because how badly does he want to? I'm not saying that. I'm just talking about people who have been saying that with the reports. I don't know that. I did not ask Travis Kelce that. Having said all of that, it's really about the fact that the Baltimore Ravens look so much better than the Kansas City Chiefs. But we all know there's no way that anybody with sense could say you would take Patrick Mahomes over you would take Lamar Jackson over Patrick Mahomes.
It's always interesting how these national sports commentators will ask a question that is supposed to be non-biased, but then they answer it in a biased way. You see, Doggy and Stephen A both go all the way back to 2018 and 2019 and 2020 to discuss Lamar Jackson's playoff history. Is it true he has a 1-3 record? Certainly. But they never provide context. There's no context for 2018 to say that he was actually a rookie, having only started 8 games when he went to the playoffs. It's no context to say that although he did win the MVP, he was still playing with a team where his best weapons were Seth Roberts and Willie Snead. That's no denigration to them, but those guys were 4th and 5th receivers on every other team they've ever been on. But they brought those guys to Lamar Jackson to have success in the playoff? Certainly not. And then 2020, where they finally won their first playoff game, and then they lost against the Buffalo Bills, where Lamar Jackson didn't play super well. But again, we don't provide context. Well, what's that context? Well, I'm glad Stephen A opened his mouth, because what Stephen A began to say when he was trying to make a case for Patrick Mahomes, and then the question isn't even who's better, because they went the who's better route, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. That's not the question. The question is, who do you trust more based on how they're playing right now? Okay? And the truth is, Lamar Jackson is playing better right now. Even when you look at the Baltimore Ravens and who they played over the last 5 games versus the Kansas City Chiefs competition, the Lamar Jackson Baltimore Ravens schedule is exponentially more competitive than what the Chiefs have faced. And Lamar Jackson has just played better. Now, we're not debating better player, right? Because to go better player, then you're going to get into mechanics and technique and throwing style and accomplishments. Well, we understand that Lamar Jackson has no accomplishments comparable to Patrick Mahomes. That's not what we're comparing, nor was that the question. Okay, who do we trust now, Joel? You got to take into consideration whose team is playing better now and who's leading that team, and that answer would be Lamar Jackson. But let's get into what Stephen A actually said so that we can. I'm not going to talk about a whole lot about Doggy because Doggy has never had anything good to say about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. But let's talk about Stephen A. Stephen A gets into the conversation of Patrick Mahomes and his weapons and how the wide receivers can't line up in the right place and how Travis Kelsey is looking older and how the wide receivers can't catch. But you know how interesting that is? When Lamar Jackson was playing with squeegees, mop buckets, and bubble gum and still being successful, nobody said one word other than Ravens Nation, one word about the Baltimore Ravens need to upgrade his weapons. They just marveled at what he was doing and they talked more about him making plays with his legs. But now that he's making plays with his arm, now you shift the conversation between he and Patrick Mahomes, which it shouldn't even be a comparison or a conversation. But now you shift it to, well, Patrick Mahomes isn't looking that great because he doesn't have weapons. Well, why did nobody afford that same type of thought to Lamar Jackson when he was playing with less talented players? And let's just be honest, Lamar Jackson is still playing with a bottom 10 wide receiving group. When you pull their statistics and pull them all together, it's a bottom 10 group. It's just the truth, which is what I said all the way back when people were trying to hype up Lamar Jackson's new weapons. Zay is a flat out stud. Odell can make a couple of plays here and there, but he's no longer the Odell that we knew all the way back for the Giants in the early days for the Browns. Rashad Bateman has never really had an opportunity because of injury to really bust out and show all that he can do. Shows flashes, but never really had that kind of game where he says, I have takeover number one type ability. Nelson Aguilar, serviceable. So even when we take into consideration why are the Baltimore Ravens wide receivers looking better? Because Lamar Jackson is making them look better. The gravity that Lamar Jackson has offensively, where all 11 sets of eyes has to know what he's doing and at all times, that's what allows and helps the wide receivers to get open. And when he puts the ball where it needs to be, they're now catching the ball. So, it's just frustrating to watch them go through this continual conversation and they continue to move the goalposts for Lamar Jackson. But you know what? Be honest, guys, I don't want nobody to believe in us. I don't want First Take to get on board. I don't want Speak to get on board. I don't want First Things First to get on board. I don't want Pat McAfee to get on board. I don't want Colin Cowherd to get on board. I don't want any show to get on board and say, oh man, the Ravens is it. Don't want nobody talking about us because the Ravens seem to play better when they take that underdog mentality. Because even though we've been the best team in the league, our record proves it, who we beat prove it, how we beat them proves it. There is still a segment that wants to question our legitimacy, and that is fine with me. I'm your guy Boulanger. Let me know what you want me to know, and I'm out.